Hello, everyone. Welcome to my new podcast, which essentially what this is when I can't create a video in time, I'm going to record an episode of this podcast, which I think I might call Rencast. A very creative name, I know. It's essentially a more of a talk show than my usual scripted content. And I'm still working on a lot of big projects, but I haven't been able to upload in a while since they're taking too long. So, for now, welcome to Rencast. Today's topic, I'm going to be talking about filler and why it's important. Which is kind of funny since this, in itself, is filler. But anyway, filler is known for sometimes getting in the way of the main plot and being quite irritating sometimes. It's it can be boring, you can't be as invested in it, and worst of all, the stakes are always very low, so why should you care? But the thing is that filler isn't just a little downtime where nothing fun's happening or no plot's progressing. What filler is filler isn't just filler like it's called. Sort of it sort of helps you get invested in the characters. For one moment, can you try to imagine what watching something like The Owl House without any filler would be like? All plot all the time. It You'd not be very invested. I mean, the plot's good, but you don't see the characters develop over time as much. You aren't invested in them. I mean, everything's high stakes, but when nothing is low stakes, it basically means that everything is. You can't just have, like, low stakes or just high stakes. You have to have both. And another criticism with filler I hear is a lot of the time it doesn't have any emotional investment in it. You kind of are like just watching or reading or playing something that doesn't seem to matter at all. But the thing is to care about a character's low moments and tragic parts of their life, you have to see their highs too. If there's no sadness, happiness is meaningless. And if there's no happiness, sadness is meaningless. If there's no comedy, tragedy is meaningless. And if there's no tragedy, comedy is meaningless. It's sort of like it's like two sides of the same coin in a way. But the thing is, you can't like just saw a coin in half and take one side. That's not how it works And even if you were precise enough to saw a coin in half somehow, there'd still be two sides. And it would be very impressive, actually, but it would still have two sides. And honestly, the main reason I'm covering this topic is I have a friend. He wants to write a thing he calls incarnate. Oh shoot, I forgot they're non-binary. They want to write a thing they call incarnate. Um, my apologies for that. They are sort of the thing is they really have this big overarching story filled with tragedy and drama, and it's very complex and stuff, but the thing is they don't want to put in any sort of comedy or filler of any kind at all. Well, I mean, I've talked to them about this before, and they said they'd add some lighter moments, but feels like they didn't really mean it. I've discussed this before with them, and I think that their writing would come off as edgy or bland if they only put in dark stuff and you need to put in filler. Essentially, this is linked to the power of bittersweet. I mean, like, just imagine this. The world explodes. That doesn't really make you sad if it's just brought up in a story that, like, yep, the world's blown up. But if the world's blown up and you escape with your friends and family and you're alone but you're still together, you have nothing but each other, the people you care about the most. That can create tragedy. And even a lot of extremely famous comedies do have a tragic element to them, so you stay invested not just for the laughs. Does anyone remember The Good Place? For those of you who don't, it was a live action sitcom that came out in the mid to late 2010s, I believe, following Eleanor Alstrop and her friends. Well, not really friends, but and some other people she hung out with. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but the concept is they're all in the afterlife. They're all dead and they are like sort of hanging out together and being getting into weird antics and stuff. But the thing is it's it's always really funny a lot of the time, but there are some episodes that'd make you cry, and in every episode, they're all dead, and there's always that piece of tragedy that comes from that. I mean, most great stories have both comedy and tragedy. It, a lot of classical stories, though, are filled too much with tragedy and stuff, which I feel like is why a lot of people don't enjoy Shakespeare or something as much as they enjoy more modern writings. And I'm not talking about like not understanding it or anything. I'm more saying I think the main reason people don't like Shakespeare and that kind of stuff anymore is it's just like tragedy with no comedy and like yeah. And here's another thing. A good story has to have closure at the end. Even if it's a sad ending, it has to be an ending instead of just a stop, kinda. Does that make sense? You can't really just leave a bunch of loose ends untied. Um, you can't just like kill a bunch of major characters and say, hey, this is over. They're all dead. The bad guy's still there. But like it you gotta deal with the bad guy somehow if you're going to do something like that. You can't just say, hey, this is a bad ending and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to say, if you want a bad ending, you have to make it bittersweet, like I was discussing before. I mean, the a lot of the most tragic endings, in my opinion, are ones that are good endings for most people, but bad for one person. Spoilers for the game Undertale. Well, they're in the pacifist ending. All of the characters are freed. Everyone except one character, Azriel, the main antagonist, who they were. It's revealed that they were basically soulless for most of the game, and well, this is kind of a weird way of describing it since it's not really revealed that Azriel is soulless. It's more revealed that Flowey is Azriel without a soul, but basically, you. The bad guy is sort of just left behind, but at the end, you sort of start to understand they're not just the bad guy. They're just someone who got hurt and lashed out. It's bitter bittersweet is the best way to make people feel for your characters, feel for your story. That's why so many great endings end with a character sacrificing themselves to stop whatever threat's going on. If you sort of don't give their sacrifice meaning, that's not really good. It just invalidates the whole thing. If but if their sacrifice means a lot and saves people and resolves the conflict, that's great. Um Although it can't just be like a sudden sacrifice yourself and this thing happens ending. And also, this is not a criticism of any of the stories I'm going to mention here, but there are a lot of shows which just sort of undo sacrifices at the end, which also makes it meaningless. Gravity Falls and Grunkle Stan's sacrifice, Amphibia and Anne's sacrifice. Um, I had something else in mind, but but I forgot, and its sacrifice of my memory. It's sort of like you gotta make the sacrifice work. It's a trade-off. You can't just undo it without any consequences. That's also a problem with a lot of like character revivals and stuff. When characters can just be revived no problem whenever you feel like it, that's problematic. And if that, and it makes you wonder why you should care. You, if you're going to resurrect a character, you have to make there be some sort of trade off. You can't just say, oh, hey, I can resurrect someone. Maybe there's a limited amount of times that people can resurrect them. Maybe characters need to give up what's most important to them to resurrect someone. Maybe they're resurrected but different, not quite the same as who they were in life, if at least for a while. It's like you can't just say, hey, remember this time I killed off that character and you got really sad about it? Just gonna pull them back out of the afterlife and place them back into life. Although you can actually potentially make pretty interesting subversions of that by making the audience think that death doesn't matter if you revive people a lot. Like, for example, here's something that I may or may not be planning on doing in something I'm working on. I I wouldn't normally mention this, but it's probably coming out in years at this point, and no one's gonna remember this video then. But a character. I apologize for that. A major character essentially can come back from death whenever they feel like it. They will be able to just die and come back as many times as they want. But at the end, I don't even know if I'm really gonna go through with this. At the end, they're gonna die for real. And the audience is gonna be like, okay, seriously? They die all the time. They'll be fine. But they won't be. It's gonna be a slow realization that, wait, they're dead for real. And that would be a very effective way of subverting that trope by making death seem inconsequential, but giving it meaning suddenly. But if you want to do something like that, you also can't just break your pre-established rules. You have to give a reason for it. You have to give a reason that death sticks that time. And it has to be a good reason that makes sense with a lore. And I feel like it should also be established preemptively most of the time. Like, for example, Avatar The Last Airbender actually does this pretty well. I mean, it didn't matter as much because of, like, the fact that it, the character, if the main character died, the main character would stay dead, but they mentioned that if the avatar is killed in the avatar state, it would end the cycle of reincarnation. And they then established that as a major threat in the sequel series, Legend of Korra. And it's very much like you can't just say, hey, this person got stabbed weird and they're dead for good because I feel like it. You have to say, this is a, like, necrotic spear that will permanently destroy their soul, preventing them from ever resurrecting. And then you kill them with it. It's. And if you do have a system of necromancy in your world, you have to be pretty smart about it. I mean, the thing I mentioned earlier that I'm working on and will hopefully be out eventually, there's a very in-depth system of necromancy, and the main problem with it is, honestly, there's not that many limitations on it. And so I have to be able to, like, add limitations. I mean, you can't just say that I characters can bring other characters back whenever they want. It has to come at a cost. Like, they, or at least there needs to be conditions that are met before it happens. Although the main problem with that is if it comes at a cost, what if the power creep starts to get too high and that cost is balanced out? Well, that's sort of a tricky question that I've I've actually been trying to solve for quite a while working on this. But anyway, enough about my little thing that doesn't exist yet. Um, I should mention, just, this is the end of the essay, but I do want to talk about my other content some. So, the 2.5 Worlds D&D campaign, I'm still making that. That's not just stopped. But the main problem is I'm dealing with some issues with, like, the audio quality and stuff. And the reason that part 2 of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Arceus's Wish theory hasn't come out yet is that I wanted to work on 2.5 Worlds D&D podcasts, editing and animation and stuff for a while before I finished that. It's it's actually completely scripted even. Just need I just need to, like, find a way to resolve audio quality issues in 2.5 Worlds D&D campaign. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do in, the video part of this video. I think I might record some, like, gameplay footage in the background and just use that. Not sure what game to use. I might go with Don't Starve. It's a pretty good game. I'd totally recommend it. And this is Ren. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell us we're cool. That last one is very important because of self-esteem issues. And see ya next time. Ideally, next time will be a more in-depth video and not just me improvising a video essay into a microphone for 25 minutes. See you guys later.